Hello, everybody. This is Mike here, and welcome to the All Metal Mode podcast. We're going to try to get this show through tonight. Boy, have we been having a lot of trouble. Gypsy and Amanda weren't able to run it last night, but that was actually another issue. We did some testing. Amanda had trouble yesterday, but we finally were able to test it and get it up and going. But then she lost electric. Her and I tested over the weekend. It worked good, so hopefully no issues tonight. Fingers crossed. So we're going to do our best to get through this show. PredatorTools.com. You can contact them at 856-455-3790. I didn't have time to do everything I wanted to, or to put my typical thing on there. Let me just say this. All I use is Predator tools, shovels, and hand diggers. Nothing out on the market I've ever seen like them. High quality. Each one is heat treated by George Leshy himself. One at a time. It's all American made steel. Second to none. I've never used anything else as good. Keeps an edge like their tools do. Best out there. PredatorTools.com, or you can give Pam a call at 856-455-3790. They have a ton of different ones to choose from. All have their own purpose. If you needed help or wanted suggestions or ideas, I could help you. I own several of them and love them. So there's that allmetalmode.com, a forum. It's new. I've wanted a forum again forever. And finally talked Joanna into helping me build it. She did most of it, and I'm really happy with it. But now we need people to join and participate. And I know forums are old school, and that's what Joanna was telling me, and she kept trying to talk me out of it. And I said, Joanna, if I can get a handful of people in there who want to have real conversations about metal detecting, I'll be happy. So hopefully we can get some people in there contributing, talking, sharing. I know everybody's gone to social media, but if you're like me, you realize it's really hard to get real conversations going through social media. None of the platforms really encourage talk or, diving deep into some metal detecting conversations. And that's what I hope to gain out of our forum. If you go to allmetalmode.com, click on forum and the navigation. It's easy to join. Please participate. We'd really appreciate it. Dirt Digest magazine, that'll be coming out when? How many days do we have left till the 1st? Next Wednesday.
About a week.
Yep, next week, and it's going really. This month's going to be really good. I'm really excited. Dorian has a really neat article, a big article in there. I'm not going to give it away, Dorian. I don't even want to bring it up.
Okay.
They'll have to read it. Casey, I apologize. Casey Oberter from Detecting the Heartland. There's an interview with him, Detecting the Heartland on Facebook. Very popular and huge Facebook group. There's an interview with him. There's an interview with Gypsy about the Apex. I can tell you this, she has over 100 hours on it. So I wouldn't call it necessarily a review, but we're definitely going to dive in a little bit and discuss that. Her and I are working on that together right now. But that girl's got some serious time on that detector, and she's answering some good questions, and we're collaborating on that. So look for that. It's going to be a great issue, so look for it next Wednesday. Shirts. If you're interested in all metal mode shirts, we have some different ones to choose from. I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about it before. I don't know, if you heard on the podcast before. I love these. Hold on, Bella Canvas. They're like cotton, just like cotton, but they don't stretch out like cotton. And that's what these shirts are. They're a little more expensive. They're expensive. We're not making money. I just sold one and it was $2 and something. So it's not about money, but if you want to if you want a all metal mode shirt, you can go out to, and we'll get a tab up for that real soon. We'll get it in our navigation soon. We're working on that, but you can go to bonfire.com and then you just search all metal mode, or it's bonfire.com/store/all-metal /mode. All metal mode / in between all metal and mode. Whew, that was rough to get out, Dorian. But I don't know. I don't even know if I told you we got shirts done, did I?
No, you didn't tell me.
Well, I apologize. Yeah, we got some different styles. Let me go out real quick. You'll have to tell me what you think of them. We're going to have Joanna wants to work on some other designs too. But hold on one second. Let me pull this up, guys, because I'm pretty proud of them. I think they look cool. We'll see what people think. Give me a second. Sorry, I should have had this done. I meant to have it up because I wanted to. So we've got one that says, hold on. Okay, here we go. We have a hoodie and we have two different shirt designs, regular shirts, and then we have a lady shirt, two lady shirt. One's what's it called? One's form fitting for women, and the other one's a race back. I don't know. I did that for Gypsy alone. Gypsy already got one, and Gypsy's like, I need it to fit. Regular shirts don't fit me real good, but let me read to you what it says if I can figure out how to do it. Anyhow, go out and check out for yourself. The logo's on the front. There's something on the back. The women's shirt just has a logo, but I came up with it. Check them out if you can, if you're interested. And yeah. And thank you, Bill, for getting that up for me. I appreciate it. He's got a link in the chat. So tonight we're going to talk about alternatives to treasure hunting that don't require a metal detector, pretty much, right, Dorian? I mean, that's the overall gist.
Yeah, I don't know so much that I would call them alternatives as other methods or other types of treasure hunting.
Okay.
Because we just all engage in various types of treasure hunting without even thinking about it, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I want to review just a little because we'll have some people this week that didn't hear, we did progress into this program about 10 minutes or so.
Right.
I've got on my notes here on the podcast, just a moment, let me get those up. Yeah, here we go. Excuse me. We brought out that the generally first concept that at least all of us older guys and gals, probably the first concept of treasure hunting. What did we associate with those words, treasure hunting? We associated pirate treasure. Excuse me. I remember, watching with rapt attention the old movies. There was a lot of sea movies, pirate movies that were filmed in the 40s and 50s. And, of course, there were more modern ones like Pirates of the Caribbean and everything. But, they always involved. You couldn't have a pirate movie without pirate treasure being involved.
Right.
So I think a lot of us, that was our first really concept. We thought treasure is a chest, a big ornate brass-bound chest with full of coins, or I guess gold bars. Excuse me, pardon me a second. Time out, got to grab a drink of water. Oh, Pardon me very much. I ate a little popcorn right before the show, and I got a little bit of a hole caught in my throat there. Okay. Let me get my train back here. All right, we're talking about pirate treasure. It formed a strong image, and I think certainly all of us that even from a young age wanted to find a treasure thought about finding a pirate treasure. And we weren't really aware of all the other types and places of types of treasures and where they were buried. We try to put a definition on the word treasure like we would on, say, metal detector or car or, table or sofa. It creates an image. You can have different colored sofas, but we basically have an image of a sofa being approximately long enough for three people to sit on, and usually has arms and a back and cushions, right? And it's upholstery of some kind or leather or whatever. Anyway, we create these mental impressions, and we never think about just exactly how do you define the word treasure? Mike, let's go through a few examples. There's an old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And how true is that to all of you out there that have ever dug a dump or will dig a dump? You're looking for old bottles, and those old dumps can have quite a few coins in them if you're willing to go to the trouble to sift all that material. But who of all the people that threw something in that dump thought that they were throwing away treasure? You see my point there, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now a couple hundred years later, we get all excited. I really, I've done some dump digging, and I love to get in an old 1800s dump.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really exciting to me. Of course, you can't use a metal detector to find bottles or even coins in those dumps because they're just full of metal. So you have to dig and you have to sift if you want to get the treasures out. But I wonder what the people that threw away everything that's in those dumps, what they would have thought watching us go at this. Oh, hey, look over here, man. Look at this bottle. I got this bottle. Man, this thing books at $230, Or I got this bitters bottle or whatever, see? And we're all excited and, oh, man, yeah, this is treasure. So that's our definition of treasure, but to them, it was their definition of trash.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So the thing is that every normal, mentally competent and reasonably healthy adult in the world actually, in one way or another, is a treasure hunter. And that's a point I want to really get across, that there is no universal definition for what is treasure.
Yes. Real quick, can I say something along those lines? You're right. They didn't know. To them, it was trash. Now, 150 years later, it's treasure to us. I've had this talk, and I think Bill and I even had this specific talk. Everybody I know who's a relic hunter comes across shotgun shell heads.
Right.
And although I've never done it, I need to someday to prove a point. I bet if you cleaned up your nicest ones, kept them and put them in a bucket, and then go through them, find the best ones, the oldest ones. Some of them are actually rare. I recently come across a website and forum on shotgun shell heads where they collect them. I guarantee if you put them in a case, cleaned up and looking good, and I don't mean shining them back up to brass, selling them as dug, and put them in a little display case and on, just lost it. Oh, geez, I need one less kid. I think on Tuesdays I need a maid that helps me out, because these kids, by the time we do the podcast, I'm a hot mess. On what's the auction site, Dorian?
Oh, eBay?
eBay. I bet you could sell those. Just like square cut nails, I found some beautiful ones. And like I was I believe Bill and I had this conversation. You know, if you took them from a really historic site, and you said that you know, an old town that disappeared, you know, for example, there's one I hunted was gone by 1832. And you said all these nails, you know, and you had them in a little display case, I bet you could sell them. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying somebody would be interested in it. But go ahead, continue.
No, okay. I think you're absolutely right, Mike. It's an excellent point. All it takes is for somebody to have a desire to collect something, and it becomes, in effect, you know, treasure to them. What we can say about the word treasure is that it signifies something of value. You know, and that value cannot be defined by just heavy metal or precious metal like gold or silver. Gold and silver have great value, and they are indeed treasures. I was looking at one of the posts on All Metal Mode just a few minutes ago, and one of our members there said he just found his first barber dime, and the first silver coin of the year. And you know what? I have no doubt that gentleman regards that as treasure. Now, it's not a big treasure, but I'm sure he would define that as a treasure.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure he puts extra value on it. He sets the value in his mind that it's worth more than just a barber dime, because it's his very first barber dime.
Yeah. Try to give him twice what double what the melt value is on that coin. I bet he'd laugh at you.
Exactly. So, you know, treasure has to be defined, and the value of that treasure ultimately has to be defined by each person. There are so many, you know, and some treasures are not even things you can hold in your hand. You know, you have these Eastern religion monks, you know, the Buddhist monks and things, and they cloister themselves away in these monasteries. Well, I forget the other word they use, but anyway, up in in the mountains of Tibet and places like that. And what are they doing up there? Well, you know, they are actually seeking what to them is treasure, and they call it enlightenment. They're looking for knowledge on a level that you can't find in your local library, you see. Mm-hmm. But to them, that's treasure. Right. And I mentioned last week, you know, that my wife, we have a nice big garden. And she is, you know, basically I do the heavy lifting for her, and she does everything else in the garden. She plants it and takes care of it. And we grow potatoes. And to my wife, now she's used a metal detector. I've never been able to get her excited about it, because I got her on a place where we would have cleaned up. We were just starting to find Civil War relics, and we were there, we thought, by permission, but it turned out the guy that gave us permission was the son of the owner, and the owner came out and said no, just as we were starting to really do well. And I never could get my wife excited about, you know, digging or using a detector for coins. But if you saw her when it's time to dig potatoes, you know, every one of those big white potatoes that comes out of the ground, you know, you could hear her giggling and laughing, because to her, that is treasure hunting. She has dug in the ground, and she is digging treasure out of that ground. And when she comes out of there with a, you know, 5-gallon bucket full of great big old taters, you never saw a happier person. Right. I'm serious. You know, I'm sure she's as happy as people that have dug up jars of coins.
Yeah, right.
So, right. You know, you see my point about treasure. so many, many things. And it's not just that people who lived, say, 200-300 years ago, threw things away or lost things in battles or whatever, and now they're considered valuable, and we hunt for them and consider them to be treasure. It's not just that. Even back in the days of the Wild West there, before the Western Indians, had quit being hostile, they would attack wagon trains. And there are, quite a few cases on record where they killed everybody in the wagon train, and they burned the wagons. They looted the wagons, but they would leave the furniture, stoves, things that the people were bringing with them from the east to go all the way to places like Oregon, and they considered them treasures. Family, they call family heirlooms. That's another word for treasure, a family heirloom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that desk, that was tucked away in that wagon, was, somebody's great grandmother's, been in the family for generations, and it was a treasure. The Indians only saw a piece of furniture they had no use for. Right. A lot of times they would leave boxes of money, currency, or coins just scattered around the site. They had no use for those. They didn't see that as treasure. What they saw were the horses and the knives and the axes and the guns and ammunition. That to them was treasure. So they would take treasures as they defined them away from that site and leave many treasures there. And metal detectors today are still finding some of the treasures that were left behind along the Oregon Trail. Mm-hmm. I remember just 2 or 3 years ago, a fellow out in Oregon along the trail, near the end of the trail, got into an area and he dug up a couple of hundred pieces of cast iron cookware. Everything from skillets to everything that they had back then. And these had been carefully packed away. They'd been greased with lard to preserve them, and they were in an excellent state of preservation. And see, that was a thing that people said, this is treasure. For whatever reason, a horse in the team died or something. We have to lighten the load. And so they buried that treasure, hoping that someday they might come back and get it. Otherwise, they could just throw them on top of the ground and left them. But they still valued it because they tried to preserve those cast iron skillets, and they buried them. So, we could talk. I mean, if we start naming the things that are actually treasure to one person or one group or another, we could do shows on that for the rest of the year and not cover them all.
Right. Hey, I got a story I want to relay that I kind of just came to me. You were talking about something you said reminded me of it. Years ago, my stepmom was an antique dealer / junk dealer, into anything and everything. A lot of antiques, a lot of junk, and she used to set up at this great big outdoor place that it was every weekend. And sometimes I'd get roped into helping her. And one time we were there late on a Sunday, and she said, that guy over there, a lot of times when he leaves, he just leaves the bottles. He just leaves them. He dumps them out of his crates and he leaves them. And she said, so I always stay late and I grab those bottles. We're talking all embossed bottles and stuff, neat stuff, older stuff. And I remember one weekend we went over there and got a couple boxes full. And this has been 20 plus years ago. I don't know. Anyhow, I went with her again. I don't know if it was the next weekend or several weekends. And she sold one of those bottles, or two, or I know at least one, if not two or three. And she got to laughing afterwards. And I said, "What's so funny?" And she said, "That's the guy who bought those is the guy who threw them out."
Oh,
And
wow.
she got such a kick out of that. And I kind of felt bad for him on one hand, but she said, she goes, hey, if he's, going to throw him out and leave him, we walked over there and got him. I mean, if he's dumb enough to buy him back, she had no nice words to say. Let's just put it that way. But, I did think that was funny, but she would sell bottles that he would throw out. And I thought, oh, okay, but she had that old junk mentality, man. She was something else. But yeah, actually bought some of his own bottles back.
That's a great story.
Right. So that man's trash was also his treasure, evidently.
Yeah.
Evidently. So, yeah.
Well, that's an amazing thing. I've never been around anybody like that. I've done my share of flea marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
But
big outdoor flea market. I don't know if they still do it or not, but yeah. Yeah, Bill said, where can he find a guy like that?
Yeah.
I probably about any man. Everybody in this chat, and Dorian, I bet you've thrown stuff away you've held on to for years, and like that stupid thing's hanging in the garage, and you throw it away, and in a month you need it real bad, and you have to go buy a new one. We've all been there, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think, we really need to take the big view and realize that everybody you meet in one way or another is hunting treasure. Some are hunting, like I said, treasures that you can't hold in your hand. You've got the people in different religions. They have goals. They want to obtain their version of paradise, salvation. Whatever the different words you want to put on it. That's written pretty much, into every religion, and that's the treasure that those people are seeking. And it's kind of interesting because I was really surprised. I was thinking about what were the oldest examples of treasure hunting that I was aware of, and then it hit me. There's 5 little short verses in the Bible where Jesus himself was talking about treasure hunting. And I thought, wow, he wouldn't have been talking about this if this wasn't done back in that day 2,000 years ago.
Right.
He said this is in the book of Matthew for anybody that wants to look it up. It's Matthew 13, verse 44. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, which when a man has found, he conceals it or hides it, and for joy thereof goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. So that's an interesting, example. And then he says, it's like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. And I got thinking, when I hunt Indian artifacts, there is a particular kind of arrowhead. It's called a Clovis. And they're very, very old. I'm not sure I'm in total agreement with the archaeologists on the age or the paleontologists, but they say they're over 10,000 years old. I think it's less than that. But be that as it may, a bottom quality, a third class quality Clovis point on a bad day is probably worth on the current market about $800, and the really choice, perfect, beautiful ones made out of special materials like obsidian and stuff, some of those have brought up to $40,000 each. And I have about probably 500 Indian arrowheads, drills, really nice artifacts I've picked up in the bean fields, just metal detecting in the last 8 to 10 years down here where I live now. And I'll tell you what, I would trade all 500 of those pieces for one really nice Clovis point.
Right.
So I really get it, what he was saying there. And
funny.
And here's another kind of treasure he mentioned. He was talking about comparing the kingdom of heaven again. He said it was like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered of every kind of fish And when it was full, they drew it to shore, and they sat down, and they gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's a type of treasure hunting. A fisherman goes out, he wants to fill his hold with good fish, but he's going to catch things, fish that have no market value, that nobody wants to eat, they're too bony or whatever. And, he doesn't put them in with the good stuff. And I got thinking, well, that's amazing, because really we're doing the same thing. Like a lot of the Civil War relic guys, they like to dig hut sites and fire pits that the soldiers made in their camps.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a one of these, Mike, that you don't find a lot of square nails and rusty metal and stuff that no relic hunter is going to put any value on.
Mm-hmm.
So those are cast aside. Those go into the, I have a multi-pouch. It has 3 different pouches on it. And I have one for the trash, one for the keepers that are not first-class stuff, but stuff that I might want to examine later. And then I have a smaller pouch where the goodies really go, the good stuff. So there's a separation process going on a lot of times in the process of finding treasure. You have to deal with a lot of things that nobody would put the definition of treasure on.
Mm-hmm.
In our current world, and I say nobody, I'm talking about those of us who see ourselves, as treasure hunters. Right. So the person that drives the suburbs looking for garage sales to hunt treasures to hunt a plate, there was a Louis XIV plate worth $30,000, and that has happened. People do find things like that at garage sales. They're just as much a treasure hunter as any of us that swing a metal detector.
Mm-hmm. Something that aggravates me, and I hear this a lot. How many times have you, saw on Facebook or in a group or wherever, talk to somebody and, I'd really like that metal detector, but I can't afford it. Well, you're not willing to work real hard for it then. I know a guy that has a family very much on a budget. There was a metal detector was not in his budget for his family. So he went and bought a starter. He wanted a $1,500 detector, right? This has been several years back. They've come down significantly. But, back then, if you wanted the best, you were spending close to $1,500. And, of course, right. He wanted one. But what he did instead is he saved up, spent a few $100s, and then, just like he always did, he took his kids to the parks and metal detected, saved up all the coins. He found some scrap jewelry or scrap gold. And I think it was after one summer, he had enough saved up to go do that. It is practically free to go dig a privy. You got to get permission. Not every one of them's going to hold valuable bottles, but a lot of them do, or they add up, and you can get into a privy that's got 20 or 30 of them worth $10 a piece. You need a shovel, you need a tarp, you need a bucket and a piece of rope. I mean, it doesn't get much more affordable than that. You can go walk the fields looking for Native American artifacts, right? I mean, that's free. You can go dig in dumps. I get so frustrated seeing all these people, I want that detector, but I can't afford it. No, you want that detector, but you're not willing to work hard enough for it. There are ways to do all that. And there's treasures everywhere. Insulators, glass insulators. Now, I don't know anything about them. You put 5 glass insulators together, and they all look the same. They're all blue. You can have one worth $5 and you can have one worth $500. Insulators are, although a small niche, are wildly popular. I know of somebody who sold one that he found in a field for $12,000.
Wow.
It went to an auction. There's so many different treasures out there. You just got to look for them. And, bottles, I've done some privy digging and I found a few pretty valuable bottles. I found one that's unknown years ago that I picked up I traded it for a little beater truck. Driving, nice little body beater truck. Not all rusted out or anything. So you can do it. There's so many different treasures out there and different things to look for if you just take the time to do it. I know a guy who collects clocks, and he knows what he's looking for. He knows what he can resell, what he can get out of it, and he will go around and to antique shops and yard sales and everything else looking for clocks. And most of them, some of them are like the grandfather clocks. Some of them he deals in more of like the tabletop size and makes really good money on the side doing that. I know a guy who does glass. That's all he buys. He has studied glass. He knows glass in and out. And he will go around to everything from flea markets to little shops to antique shop, anywhere he thinks he might find a piece of glass. And he has found some really, really valuable glass and turned around and sold it. There's so many ways to do stuff like that.
Oh, and you make a good point, Mike, and you haven't verbalized it. I'll try to put a little bit of verbalization here to something that you just taught us, and that is that treasure can be overlooked or not perceived because a person is not educated to the ins and outs of that particular item, like you said, whether it's insulators or glass or whatever. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, where you begin, if you think, well, I want to find a treasure at flea markets or garage sales, you can make either one of those, especially, or you could do both. I've got some experience doing both, but you have to have reference books. And you have to spend, on rainy days and times when you've got time, or, you're recuperating from a cold or the flu, or there's something that, we're locked down or whatever, educate yourself, something that interests you. If you're interested in glass, then invest in a reference book on glass. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Here's a little tip. Good reference books, my two best reference books on Indian artifacts cost me new $75 a piece.
Wow.
Yes, but they educated me on the high dollar artifacts so that if I ever find any of those, I will know immediately when I see them that I've got a high dollar artifact, and I will treat it as such.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, what if you're saying, well, that's just totally out of my budget. I understand. At the time I bought those, I had my own business, and I was making enough money to pay my bills with some left over to spend on things like that. Now I can't do that. If I want a reference book, let's say, and I think you'll like this, Mike, let's say you and I decided that we were going to become insulator hunters, since you mentioned that one, 12,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would do is say, okay, we've got to get some reference books. Now, there are, in almost every kind of collectibles, there's somebody that's putting out a yearly updated book on the basic values of that particular thing. For example, with the bottles, the old bottles, old cork stoppers, embossed medicine bottles, things like that. There is the Bible, more or less, has been Covels, Kovels, and they put out a new, an updated version. It's a big, thick reference book with pictures and prices, and they've put it out every year, probably for the last, I don't know, over 20 years. I've got 3 or 4 of their deals. But what I would do, if I can't pay the going rate, let's say the current book is $35, $40, $45. What I'll do is go online and I will use a search engine like Alibri that will connect me basically to old books in over something like 60,000 or 100,000 bookstores all around the world. And a lot of times I can find, for example, maybe I can't afford a 2020 Covels, but what about a 2019 or 2018? Mm-hmm. That's still going to point out to me which bottles are the most valuable. You see, that's still going to give me almost 100% of a basic education on which bottles that I want to look for. If I go to garage sales, if I dig in dumps, if I go to flea markets, which bottles, here's a bottle that books in perfect condition for $3,000. Well, there are people that don't educate themselves. They just go dig dumps, and they take the bottles to flea markets. I went to such a flea market up near Cincinnati, and Mike, this one guy there, he had bottles. I bought a really great blue glass, hand-blown pepper sauce Civil War bottle. And he didn't even know what he had. And I bought it for 80 cents.
Oh, wow.
It was worth a lot more than that.
Right.
And the condition and the fact that the neck was kind of crooked on it, it was just a handmade thing. It really had character. We use it for a flower vase on our dining room table.
Oh, that's neat.
I love that bottle. Every time I look at it, it's and you know why? I keep it in the house on display because I can't display everything I found. But I keep that there because every time I walk by and see it, it says to me, you got this for 80 cents. There's other bargains out there waiting for you.
Right. Absolutely.
So it kind of keeps me fired up and makes me think about stopping at garage sales and this type of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think basically we need to be multi-dimensional treasure hunters. It's okay to have a favorite. It's okay to say, well, all I want to dig is silver coins, or all I want to dig is Civil War relics, hunt is Civil War relics. I understand that. But, don't pass up one treasure while you're looking for another.
Right. Absolutely.
Are you going to walk a Civil War campsite in a farmer's field and pass up Indian artifacts that are laying right there, on the surface?
Right. It sure pays to keep your eyes open.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Mm-hmm. And, one thing, too, that you run into is a lot of people, they place values on treasure. It's one thing if an item you find like this, your member's barber dime, it's okay for him to place sentimental value on it and say, I wouldn't take, the book says it's worth $15 and I wouldn't take 3 times that for it, because it's my first barber dime. Understand that. But a lot of people will find Indian artifacts. For example, some of the people that walk the fields, they have some really nice collections. And then they think they're going to get $8 or $10 a piece for these arrowheads. And they discover that it's hard to get $10 for the whole display case full of them. Mm. Because they're not the rare ones. They're the common ones.
Mm. Yeah.
And no matter what the books say, you're doing good to get 50 cents to $1 a piece for them. See,
Right. Yeah, the books, any reference book I've ever went through is you can't always trust it.
no, it's just like a coin book. Uh, it's okay to use the coin books, but I would do this if you're looking to try to value a coin you found by, let's see now. There's the red book and the blue book, and I always, for some reason, all my life, I tend to get these two confused. I think the red book is the one that you want to use, and if it says that your 1916S Barber dime, in good condition is worth $15, then cut that in half. If you want to sell it, cut that in half, and that way you won't be disappointed. You'll know going in that the real value on the market is probably going to be about half of what the red book says. That's a pretty good general discount to use, and getting down. See, there's the stated value, and then there's the real value. The real value of something is determined by what you can get for it.
Yep, absolutely. One piece of advice I always give to people: you can go out to eBay and you can see completed auctions, and nothing will tell you what something's worth than what somebody's already paid for it. And I think that's a great reference. Bill just typed that up in the chat. But that's what I will usually do. If I don't know what something's worth, I'll go out there to the completed listings and see what people have paid for it. And especially when you come to coins and stuff, you'll find that they're paying far less than what any book will tell you. So
well, you bring up though, you bring to mind something that happened at a government auction that I went to, and I hadn't told this one. I told the one about the F-16 carburetor being, that was worth $160,000, and it sold for $300 to the high bidder. But there was another guy. There was a whole bunch of computers, government computers, that were for sale, and these three guys got in a bid war on them, and this one guy finally won, and he bought all of these government computers for $35 a piece. And then he had to go rent a U-Haul truck to haul them all because there was about 300. So I asked him when when I came to pick up, I'd bought some government metal desks, really cheap, and they were really good quality, and I actually did make a little money reselling those. And whoever got them got a bargain on a really nice, stout desk. But anyway, I was there to pick up my desk, and the guy had his U-Haul truck, and he was loading up all these computers. He and his, I guess, wife and maybe a couple family members were helping him. And I said, by this time, I understood that usually when people bid on a big lot of computers or something like that, Mike, they've got some inside information.
Yes.
They usually already know where they're going to sell them and how much they're going to get for them. So I asked the guy, I told the guy, I said, wow, I said, that's a lot of computers. I said, you found a market for them, did you? And the guy looked at me, he says, oh no, he says, this is the first time I've ever bought it. And he says, but I figure somebody would be willing to give $35 or give $55, $60 a piece for them. And that shocked me. And I thought, wow, that big bid war. And I talked to another guy I had met that was really knowledgeable in the government auctions. I went over and talked to him. I said, this fellow over here, apparently is new to the auctions, and he just paid $35 a piece for over 300 government computers. I said, is he going to be able to sell those things and make any money? And the guy looked at me and he said, no. He said he's in for a great shock. I said, what do you mean? He said those computers are worth about $10 a piece, and that's for the gold on the contact points. You have to take them apart and melt the gold off the contact points. They have about $10 worth. And he said, other than that, they have no value at all.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to see human nature, go to some auctions. It's incredible. Incredible to watch people do stupid things. I've been to many. I love going to auctions, and I've seen that. I went to a big one in Cincinnati where it was all like flooring and hot tubs and windows and doors. And I watched these two women bid on flooring, wood flooring, and I'm doing the math in my head, and all of a sudden it hit me. They're paying more than what you could go buy it for in the store. And this lady went crazy, and these two are fighting back and forth, and finally she won it, and she was so happy. And what it was is you got to pick which ones you wanted, which flooring you wanted. They had different lots, and the lady who had bid her up won the next one for a small fraction of what the first bid was, but they come to find out they both wanted different flooring. And don't I couldn't tell you now how much it was a square foot or anything like that, but it was quadruple or something the first lady bid. And here come to find out the lady bidding against her and bid it up so high, wasn't even interested in the same flooring. People get excited. If you want to see guns and coins get sold for way too much, go to auctions. It's always, any auction I've ever been to, I've never seen a gun go for what I would consider a reasonable price. Same with coins.
Yeah.
I've been in an auction, and all of a sudden it's like you can go buy that from your local coin dealer for less than that. It's like, whoa, what are these people thinking? But also you can get some amazing deals. I bought a truckload once of books, and my brother loves books, and he's got a big basement, and he put up shelving. My brother just reads and reads and reads, and I bought a truckload of books, and I think my total was like $12, $12 or $14, and it was a huge auction. My brother was there; he was at another one, and when we met up, and he said, "Did you find anything? Did you buy?" I said, "I bought a truckload of books." And he's like, "Well, why?" And I said, "I paid $12 or $14." And he goes, "Oh, okay. Where are they at?" He was all excited. And I loaded those up, and we ended up selling a few. I put them on eBay, not knowing what they're worth, but he wasn't interested in them. One of them was a Bible from the 1800s.
Wow.
In bad shape. I listed it like that and showed all the damage. That brought like $150. I sold a book from the 1800s on veterinarian stuff that brought, I can't remember if it was $60, $70 or what it brought. It was good money. But, you can find great deals, but you also got to watch because people go crazy over something.
They get their emotions involved.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's the same thing. This recent treasure, the Forrest Fenn treasure that was found, several people died searching for that.
Right.
And that shouldn't have ever happened. They got their emotions involved in what they were doing. Any type of treasure hunting, boy, you got to be stone cold sober, and have your feet on the ground. And you got to know, it's just like the money pit. It's well named. Mm-hmm. It's well named. Millions and millions of dollars have been spent, and at least 4 people have lost their lives. For what? For nothing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because their emotions told them they were going to find this huge, huge treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever. And so they kept pouring more and more and more and more and more and more and more money into it. And you know what? The Money Pit finally did make money. It's making money for the people that have turned it into a reality show.
Right. Right.
You know, and that's the first time the Money Pit, frankly, is making money.
Yeah.
So,
Bill, I think it was Bill. Yeah, Bill said, leave the emotions at home when going to an auction. That's the best piece of advice you're ever going to get.
yep.
I was at
Bid Wars.
I was at an auction across the street from my house in Lancaster, Ohio, and they were selling glass, like collectible glass. And I mean, there were tables and tables and tables of it. And I stood out there and watched a little bit, and they had another auctioneer in the house, and I didn't know anything about glass, nothing I was interested in. So I went in the house, and I don't know what I paid. It was a few bucks, under 20. I can guarantee you that. And I bought a truckload, again, another truckload of mason jars.
Wow.
Every one of them was blue or green and old. The old metal, the old metal lids, zinc lids.
Zinc lids, uh-huh.
And I had but how do you pass up on that? I mean, box after box. It had the ones with the glass. Either it was zinc lids or the glass lids with the pins or the arms that came up and snapped across the top.
Okay, right. I've got one right here in front of me. Yep.
Yeah, they were all different, mostly ball jars, but a lot of Atlas and some different odd and end ones. And I didn't make any money on those. Actually, what I do is my sister-in-law cans, and I took them all to her. I kept a few and stuff, but that was, I don't know.
Can I ask you if you ever figured out approximately what you paid a piece for them?
Oh, probably a few pennies. I mean, it was a truck. I've got a long bed truck. I know I do have a toolbox in the bed. Mm-hmm. I had them stuffed underneath and all the way across the back and then stacked on. They didn't come up over the bed, but it was a bigger part of a truckload. I mean, without sticking out up over the top. If I remember right, I could have got another box or two in. What I paid, again, I think I paid $10 or something, or $8.
Oh, wow.
It was something crazy.
Good grief,
for
Mike.
a bed load. I couldn't pass it up, and I didn't even want them. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do? Yeah. Well, I'll take them down to my sister-in-law,
Oh, today you could go into an antique junk shop and pay $10 for one common blue glass mason. Mm-hmm. And back then they were easily bringing, especially with a lid, they were bringing $3 to $3.50 a piece at the time about when you would have found these. So 3 jars would have paid or would have returned your investment if you'd sold them, and the rest would have been pure profit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I could have made a fortune off that, but my sister-in-law uses them and canned stuff. I gave some to family. My mom wanted a couple. There were some gallon ones that were colored, and one was a big Atlas. I remember that big Atlas, blue or green, I forget. But yeah, they were all just. I think if I remember right, there was about a box of them that were just the clear ball jars. The rest were colored. There was very few clear ones. They were all colored. So there's good deals to be had in auction, but don't let your emotions get involved. I'll tell you another funny thing I bought years ago at an auction. I found these. Have you ever saw? It's almost like a plate with sides, and then there's a handle, and they're oven safe, and you can bake right with them. And I thought that's what these were.
Are you talking about Corningware?
I'm not sure what I know. I paid a few bucks for them, and when I took them, I came from the auction to my mom's, and I took them in to show her, and I said, "Aren't these for baking?" And she couldn't believe it. She'd always wanted a set. I thought that's what they were for baking. I wanted a set, but Mom ended up getting them from me and showed me where they were worth they were like $100 a piece to purchase.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. They were ceramic. I remember that, and they have handles on them. I don't know, but something about them made them really expensive. You just never know what you can get at an auction, but you got to be careful. You got to know. You got to. You can't let your emotions get involved. Okay, I think I've talked enough about good deals.
That's a good point, Mike. They have here in, I think it's US 127 Road, they have a 500-mile garage sale every spring. I've forgotten exactly when it is. But, I mean, you can't begin to cover with a tiny, tiny fraction of it. And just imagine, garage sales that are practically wall to wall. Everywhere there's a house, somebody that lives along US 27, they've got something out front for sale. And if I were someone who was struggling to come up with the money to buy a high dollar metal detector, I would start haunting the garage sales. And I would look for things that I could resell, that I could turn around and put on eBay, or I could if I had a little bit of storage room, I'd store up enough stuff that I bought really, really cheap, and then have my own garage sale, and do things like that. Like you said, if somebody wants to get a more expensive detector, and then they can't take it out of their take home pay to do it, then that's the way you do it. Just like if somebody said to me, well, I want one of these new $5,000 imaging detectors that shows you the shape of what you've got in the ground, because they have them now. But I can't afford it. I'd say, well, take your Equinox 800 or whatever you got and go to the beach and hunt gold rings, because a certain percentage of the gold rings you're going to find are going to have a diamond in them.
Right.
And I remember back when Gary and Arlene Bishke that founded Outdoor Outfitters, Arlene was a beach hunter. She hunted Lake Erie up there, the beaches.
Yeah.
And she got one spring, Mike, after the winter storms and stuff, she got a $26,000 diamond ring. And the next spring she got a $13,000 diamond ring. Oh,
wow.
You see, wow. So what you do is, you don't go hunt coins in the park, new money, because eventually you'll find enough to buy a detector, but you'll probably get enough to buy it a lot quicker if you play the odds and go someplace where people lose, valuable rings, and that's at the beach, the swimming holes, right there, Mike, between you and Keith Will somewhere in East Texas there, on a creek. I know a guy got into an old swimming hole that dated was used from about 1880 to 1920s. And he bought a cheap handheld underwater metal detector that were popular back in the 70s, and he got a used one for less than $50. And he got into that swimming hole, and he took out over 2,000 gold and silver rings.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and I would say if you're trying to save up for a new detector or something like that, maybe don't go searching for something you can't let go of. I've got flat buttons with no design on them. I couldn't sell if somebody wanted to buy it. I don't know, but I could sell a bottle. I can sell a gold ring, whatever. But you want something you can get rid of. But I'll tell you one that's really neat. You made me think of. I know of a guy. My brother's brother-in-law. It's his boss, or was his boss. I don't know if they still work together. Metal detected and got into an old swimming pool from the turn of the century. Nobody had ever detected it, and went in there and found thousands of silver coins. I guess he went under where they changed and showered, or I don't think they showered, they only changed. It was, there were holes in the floor, and I guess he brought out hundreds and hundreds of silver coins just from where they went in to change. There are places like that still out there. You got to look for them, but that's been in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah,
This isn't a story from the 70s. You know, this is somewhat not too long ago.
Yeah, I think Keith Wills would know about this one. There was a place, it was a camp of some kind, and it was gone. Maybe a few rock foundations of some buildings. And, oh man, one of the East Texas guys, the East Texas Treasure Hunters Club, I think it was, got in there and just, like you said, found actually, I think 2,000 or 3,000 coins, many of them silver, many of them dating back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. You know, everything from silver dollars to you name it. Excuse me. And the thing was, hang on a minute. Pardon me. The thing was that this place was like 15 miles from my house, and he'd done a better job of researching than I had. Oh. He had found this place, and I hadn't. It was just that simple.
Those hurt. Those hurt.
Well, and that's the thing, though. See, we have perception of what's around us, like where I am right now. There's not one person, I don't know anybody else except my wife, who knows that on the mountain right across the road from my front gate, on top of the mountain, is a U.S. cavalry camp.
Now, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah. I have a problem because the guy that owns the property grows marijuana. And I don't want to accidentally walk into one of his patches up there on the mountain.
No, you do not.
But see, it's not the place relic hunters would look for a camp, because you're thinking, oh, no, here's this beautiful valley with this big creek, which flows through my property. They're going to be down there along the creek where they could get water. Well, that's pretty good reasoning. But if you don't know that these mountains are full of springs popping out high and low on them, then it's not good reasoning, see? Because the reason the cavalry camp is up there, it was easily defensible. By the time any enemy made it up to the top, they'd be wore out. I'm serious, because I've climbed that mountain. Right. Right. And the thing was, they had their camp up there because they had a spring up there where they could get enough water.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But see, it really helps. The more history you learn about an area, the more you explore it, the more you're likely to come across information that's been forgotten, pretty much lost. It might be buried in some obscure book in a library somewhere in the back room, but it's something that most people don't know.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
But
you
when
never
you
know where you're going to find something.
Right.
I got a response to that. I'll tell you something that, 10 years ago, I met a guy that had been detecting 20 plus years. I don't remember how many. And where he lived, right down the road, not within a few miles, somebody new got into the hobby. And that guy, brand new to the hobby, and this guy had always lived there as far as I know, right down the road from him, and when I say little town, I mean no stoplight, no nothing. This new guy went and detected it, and he found some amazing stuff there. I mean, like a silver 20-cent coin, a couple 2-centers, a handful of I mean, this site gave up some incredible finds, and it had to have been a little park since the mid 1800s, or the town used it for something. Now it's just a little park with nothing, and I always thought, how did the guy that lives right down the road from there never hunt that? So you just don't know. Sometimes it's, but no doubt in my mind, if he'd have hunted it, he'd have found it. He was a heck of a detectorist. But I never had the nerve to, I would think that would almost be embarrassing to him. I didn't want to embarrass him. But lived there all of his life and evidently had never detected there.
Well, there's an old saying, familiarity breeds contempt. And very, very often people have this psychological thing where they own detectors. They'll get in their car and they'll drive 50 miles to metal detect, and they'll overlook an old school site or a carnival site or something that's within 5 miles of their house. They'll drive right by it for years. I'm embarrassed to tell this story. When I lived in East Texas, I would get off the main freeway that ran between Texarkana and Dallas, and I had to drive about 30 miles off the freeway to get to my home. And when I got within about 5 miles of my house on the road I lived on, there was, right where a little crossroads was, with not much around it, right in the corner of one corner was the obvious site of a burned down house. So there's still a few pieces, old tin roofing and an old burnt out appliance or two sticking up from the site. And it was detectable, but I thought, it's just, I don't want to get in there and fight all of those weeds and snakes and everything else. And, but it looks like it was a poor people's shack, so they're not going to be much there. See, I decided, I made all these great decisions in my mind about this place.
Right.
Well, one day, I had actually opened a little metal detector shop for a while there in East Texas. And one day I was in the shop, and a member of the local treasure hunting club, an old geezer, had great big old white sideburns and wore Stetson, and his name was Floyd something. I don't remember his last name, but old Floyd came in, and he's grinning like a Cheshire cat. And I said, okay. I said, what have you been up to? What do you got to show me? And he smiled. He says, you know where that old burned down house site is at the crossroads before you get to the freeway? He said, about 5 miles back. I said, yeah. He says, you ever hunt it? I said, no, I figured there was too much metal trash and stuff, and I'm not really big on hunting burned down house sites. I wasn't then, you understand?
Right.
And he says, I hunted it this morning. And he's grinning from ear to ear, and he's got his chest stuck out. And I'm thinking, oh, boy, this is going to be bad. So I said, okay, what do you got in the bag? He takes this little drawstring bag, and he turns it upside down on the counter, and here's clunk, 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 clunk. And there's 7 ounces of melted gold coins that he found that morning in that old burned down house site. 7 ounces, Mike, of gold.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I drove by it 100 times or more.
Yeah, we're getting off the subject here a little bit, but I think you're really onto something, and that's something I would tell anybody is don't do that. We've all done it, Dorian. I'll tell you one that when I moved to Lancaster, Ohio, and didn't know anybody, I would strike up conversations every chance I get. Hey, you know any place to metal detect? Everybody'd say the old fairgrounds, and yeah, looking for house sites or where an old house is, and you got any friends that live in old house stuff, and everybody would always say the fairgrounds. Well, one spring I found myself just not much going on, and I thought, I had to go down to that old fairgrounds, and I called to make sure. I didn't know where to go because there's some houses in there and stuff, and so I called, and yeah, you can hunt back in the back. We don't want you around the front anywhere, but no, it's not a problem. Well, I ended up finding over 40 silver coins out there, and Indian heads, and everything else out of there. And I just kept overlooking it, and I'm glad I didn't forever. And I know other people that have been there and found more silver coins and stuff that still gives up back there. They move dirt around and everything else, and don't get to where you dismiss a site before you even try it. And that's more for the us guys that have been doing it a long time, because people new to the hobby will usually swoop into places like that and just tear it up, and we're left scratching our heads and thinking it was already hunted out or whatever. But boy, that site sure wasn't. And so you got to do it. Give it a chance. You never know.
And actually, we're not really off topic. We're talking about treasure hunting, but the point of talking about treasure hunting, Mike, is, at least from my perspective, we're moving towards trying to make a point about everybody's a treasure hunter, but not everybody is a treasure finder.
Right. Boy, you're not kidding there.
So what we want to do is try to help our audience move from being treasure hunters to being treasure finders. Now, granted, we've got some old veterans that are treasure finders that are listening, and, my hat's off to you. You have my complete respect. I congratulate you on your accomplishments. I know you paid your dues. I understand that. I've been there and done that too. So I know what you went through. At least I have a pretty good idea. But we also have people that, like the gentleman that just dug his first barber dime. He's got a bucket lister, and there'll be more of those bucket lister wins along the way, more of those little treasures to find. But the point is, whatever kind of treasure hunting you're going to do, whether you're, of course, we know that when you say metal detecting, we have all these subcategories of metal detecting. We have, relic hunting, coin hunting, gold nugget hunting, ring hunting, and on it goes. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to hunt Indian artifacts, or you're going to hunt treasures at a garage sale, or you're going to hunt treasures at an auction, educate yourself so that you don't go in cold turkey and make assumptions about how valuable something is. Do what Mike Hare did. Go in there, and when you see something like a load of mason jars that can be bought for $10, jump on it. You can't lose when you're buying those $10 or $15 treasures. But when you start throwing $150 or $500 or $1,200 around buying stuff, and you're not yet expert in that particular type of treasure hunting, be it auctions or whatever, that's where you're going to lose your butt. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But look, it's just like garage sales. I have a guy that tells me, he says, man, I get to the garage sales the moment they open, and I get, best choice on everything. That's how I find my treasures at the garage sales. And I said, I find mine by trying to arrive at the garage sales just about when they're ready to close. What? Everything's already gone. I said, no, it's not. Things that were too high priced are still there, and the people are wanting to wrap it up, and go do something else. And that's when they will deal and drop the price. That's when you buy that $200 piece of furniture for $25 or $30. You see?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So I'm not faulting the guy that goes early. That's one way to do it. But see, there's another way to do it too. And you play the odds. The more garage sales you attend, the more you quickly decide. I mean, you walk onto a site or just drive by it, and you look at the tables, and if it's all children's clothes and toys, forget it. Unless you're a collector of children's clothes and toys.
Right.
What I look for at a garage sale from the road is any table that has a display of old bottles. And if it has a display of old bottles, I stop and I look for treasures among those bottles, because probably 60% of people that are garage selling old bottles, it might be, a deceased relative's bottles, and the people have no idea what they're worth. So they just take a guess. They put, $2 or $3 on an old bottle, and I know bottles well enough to know if it's a $2 or $3 bottle or if it's a $20 or $30 bottle. So, that's the kind of thing. The education factor in whatever type of treasure hunting you want to do. For example, let's just take one aspect of metal detecting: beach hunting, ring hunting on the beaches. When I worked for Garrett, we had a guy who was a Garrett dealer up in New Jersey, and he hunted the boardwalk up there, the famous boardwalk on the beaches. And he was finding 2,000 to 3,000 gold and silver rings a year. I was impressed. And so he showed up to visit the factory, and he brought some of his best rings and things to show me. And so I took him to lunch and bought his lunch. And I pumped him, man. I pumped him dry. How do you do this? What are your tricks? What are your tips? He gave me an education on ring hunting, and I didn't have any idea how ignorant I was. If I'd gone to the beach, I would have had very little chance of doing any good. But once he told me the tips and the tricks and where to look, where I would not have looked, then all of a sudden, I cannot, and I never came close to his expertise, because that was his specialty. That's what he did all the time. He hunted rings. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, after talking to him, I started finding a lot more rings than I ever had before.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, I think if you're going to get into something, metal detecting, bottle hunting, privy digging, any of that stuff, talk to people that have done it. Most of them will share their information. You want to get into looking for Indian artifacts.
Absolutely.
So, talk to the experts. Talk to somebody who's done it. And it'll help you. Absolutely.
It's just like, without giving too much away here, Mike, there's not a lot of organized treasure hunts, or seeded hunts as they're more commonly called now. Not a lot of them going on this summer thanks to the pandemic thing. There's one next weekend in Seymour, Indiana, and it's basically kind of a reestablishment of one that used to be called Treasure Week, back in the 70s and 80s. Ran for a whole week, and it was sponsored by Kenny Ray of Ray's Metal Detectors, and that's spelled W-R-A-Y-S. You can look up Ray's Metal Detectors online if you'd be interested in going to this event. They have campsites available at the site and everything. And people say, well, I don't want to go, and I don't want. Even if you don't participate in the hunt, you ought to go to one or two of these, because the real treasure is not necessarily at all what you come out of the fields with. You might, do well. Generally speaking, if you're brand new to seeded hunts, you have to be fast, and you have to be good at pinpointing, and you have to be good at recovering a target out of the ground that's buried about 2 inches deep. The faster you are, the better you do, because there's prize tokens out there, and statistically, the more targets you dig in the hunt, the more prize tokens you'll get.
Right.
And the prize tokens can be simple prizes like a a set of headphones or a book, or they could be a gold coin or a top of the line metal detector. And but the thing is, that's how they're marketed, for all the silver coins that are buried and everything, Mike. But the real treasure that you find at these events, and this one is going to be kind of a reunion for a lot of us. I haven't been there in 30 years, and there's going to be guys I haven't seen in 30 years. Guys that, when we used to go there on Treasure Week, one of the absolute most treasured things was sitting around the campfires at night in the campgrounds and telling our stories. And out of that would come invitations to go hunt. Come to Virginia, and I'll take you out on a campsite. Come here, and we'll go hunt the beach, where these old Spanish coins are being found. Things like that. I got a lot of invitations to come hunt, and I learned a lot because there were guys there that were really, really good at every aspect of metal detecting you can think of. From nugget hunting to relic hunting to coin hunting, ring hunting. So there was so much to learn, and people are really friendly and willing to share amazing amounts of information. I met guys, there were guys there that hunt caches, and that's all they do. They don't hunt coins. They don't hunt relics. They don't hunt gold nuggets. They hunt caches of money. And sitting around the campfire with them, that's when the stories come out, and that's when you learn some amazing things. So I always felt I never valued when I entered these events, and I'm not going to enter the field hunts this next weekend because I can't get up and down off the ground as fast as I used to due to your old injuries kick up in your old age, and I banged a knee pretty good. It'll fall off a roof. And so I can still get down and get up, and it's fine for going out on a house site, but it's no good for contests of speed. And so I will go, probably act as a hunt marshal, help, supervise or whatever. And I think, Mike, I'm going to represent Dirt Digest magazine for you while I'm there. I'm going to wear my shirt.
All right. Nice.
And I think Mike Fuson's going to come down too. He's not too far away from there.
Oh, that's good.
Anyway, I would really encourage everybody to come for the experience of the fellowship and all the excitement. Watch the hunts, and it's hard. I can guarantee you won't be bored. You will not be bored. Also, besides Kenny's hunt coming up, the 19th of July it begins. Is it's a 7-day hunt. It's at Starve Hollow State Park near Valonia, Indiana. And I was trying to think. The fellow's name to contact is, I'll post it, Mike, on All Metal Mode.
Okay.
A different manufacturer or detector accessory company sponsors each day. There's a Garrett day, there's a Mine Lab day, and so on. And so you can enter the hunts one day at a time or all 7 days, whatever you want to do. They have a wonderful campground there at Starve Hollow State Park and a beautiful lake. It's a great place to camp, very pretty place. And it's out west. If you go halfway between Cincinnati and Indianapolis and then go due west about probably 80 miles, it'll be in that area right in there. But look up Valonia, Indiana, and look up Starve, not Starved, not with a D, Starve Hollow State Park. But it'll be a 7-day event. I'll probably go up for 2 or 3 days and see if I can sell some books and maybe do some more repping for Dirt Digest while we're there. And see old friends. That's going to be a different group of hunters I already know several that are going to be there that I want to see that I haven't in a long time.
Oh, good.
So stories will be told, campfires will be built, and even us old geezers are going to have a good time. So I hope to see some of you there. anyway, that to me is a type of treasure hunting, just going to the organized hunts. And the treasures, even if I don't enter the hunt, I will go home with information. I will go home I'll get to see, Mike, I'll get to see every type of metal detector that's being used right now. Right. So I can start to play catch up. I can talk to the guys using everything from a Rutus to a Amphibio to whatever, and I can hold the detectors in my hands. I can look at them, and like I said, that right there is going to help me update. And so, and for those of you that haven't decided what kind of detector you want to buy, that would be a great place to come and talk to the people, because the ones you got your eyes on, there'll be somebody there using it, and you can walk right up to them and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying one of those. How long have you had your detector? How many hours do you have on it? What's your opinion of it?"
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's great. That's a great thing to do. So see, again, that's another form of treasure hunting. Even at a treasure hunt, you can hunt. Information can be a great treasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Dorian, I've been sitting here for 2 hours. I've spent most of my day here working on the magazine. Let's get to wrapping it up, but we can't wrap up without a treasure story. Bill pretty much said he wasn't ever going to listen again if you didn't have a treasure story tonight. He didn't put it in those words exactly, but he pretty much said that. And then he also said, you survived the fall. His question is, did you bring up another bundle of shingles while you were down there?
Yeah. Well, I actually wasn't doing shingles. I was cleaning a customer's gutters. And I was on the top of a 2-story house, and they had a second-story deck, so I put my ladder on the second-story redwood deck and up against the gutter. And stupid me, I didn't do a nailer at the bottom of the ladder. And when I stepped on the first rung, the feet slipped on the deck, and my leg went between 2 rungs, and I fell. I grabbed at the gutter and missed, and I fell on top of the ladder. And there was nobody home. They were on vacation, and I didn't have a cell phone on me, and the neighbors couldn't hear me, and I couldn't move. And I thought my back was broken. Anyway, the reason his knees messed up, Mike, I bent one rung where my leg went between the 2 rungs. I bent one into a U shape pointing up, and the other into a U shape pointing down.
Oh, ouch. I got to go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, and the bone didn't break.
Yeah, lucky you. I got a great roof story, falling off a roof. My brother was a roofer for many years, had his own business, and he still does some of it, but that's a young man's world there.
Oh yeah.
He'll do some, but he's more into remodeling. Well, I was right out of high school working for my dad, who was a builder. My brother was on the job, his own company, keep in mind, roofing this house. And my grandfather, who was long retired, would come back from Florida every summer and just yell and scream at us on the job, right? That was his job. He gave himself this job, even though my dad would tell him to get his old bud home and not use those words, because he'd come out and yell at everybody on the job site like he still owned the company. Well, it was a hot day, and we're sitting around taking a break. Everybody's drinking water. And here comes old Grandpa yelling and screaming, saying every swear word there is to get back to work. Well, my brother, self-employed, he's yelling at my brother to get up on the roof. Now, you got to understand, it was a hard job, but we never talked back to our grandfather. It's just respect. You just deal with it and you go on. Boy, under your breath, you'd sure say some words, because he was a tough old bird. Anyhow, my brother went back on the roof, and unbeknownst to us, he had fallen off the back of the roof. Well, my brother always had headphones on. This is back before Bluetooth and everything, but they had an antenna on them and stuff. Well, he come walking around the side of the house, and my grandfather's yelling and screaming at him. I thought I told you break was already over. And, I don't know if you've ever been in construction, some pretty nasty words can fly. And to this day, I'll never forget it. I can't repeat it. My brother, who would never dare talk back to my grandfather or anything, and as he got closer, you could see his headphones were bent and broken on his head. His knees and legs were busted up. He'd scratched his face real good, had blood running down his face. And about every swear words you could ever heard come out of my brother's mouth telling my grandfather to mind his own business. He had just fallen off the roof and I'm
sorry. It's not funny, really, but
yeah, it sure wasn't. Boy, I just hightailed it and got back to work. But boy, my brother just had enough, and my grandfather just walked away. He knew it wasn't a good time to mess with my brother. So anyhow, let's go ahead and wrap it up. I got Randy. I can hear him crying and stuff. He needs some dad love before he goes to sleep, and we need to.
All right. Well, Bill, this is going to be a bit of a Civil War relic treasure story. During the Civil War in 1862, there was a division of 10,000 United States troops stationed at Cumberland Gap on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. And they had quite a facility there. And the commanding general was named General George Morgan. Well, they were getting surrounded. They had 10,000 Confederates behind them and about 30,000 in front of them. And Morgan was afraid he was going to lose his whole division, that he'd be forced to surrender if they surrounded him and fought. So he blew up all of his bunkers and burned down all of the houses and warehouses and things. They blew up the extra ammunitions, blew up hundreds of rifles. The explosion scattered everything they had when they were set off after the troops had evacuated and started on a 200-mile march to the Ohio River to try to escape being captured or destroyed as an army. When they touched off, the guys left behind touched off the explosive charges on all of their goods and rifles and things. Rifles and uniforms and knapsacks and shells were thrown for 2 miles in all directions. And this is not the treasure story that I'm talking about, because that's all federally controlled property now. It's loaded with artifacts, but you can't hunt it. The one I want to talk about is on the trip back to the Ohio River, which eventually ended at Greenup, Kentucky on the Ohio River. They kind of followed the Big Sandy River, and it was pretty well dry, been a drought. And they actually, many, many places after the first 30 miles or so of this 200-mile trip, they cut a road through the wilderness. And they were on a very narrow part of the road. There was a cliff drop-off, or a very steep bank on the right side, and there was vertical cliffs on their left. And they were negotiating a sharp turn in the road along the river. And they were somewhere about halfway between the Cumberland Gap and Greenup, Kentucky on this route. And I'll give you the book reference that if you want to follow up on this. They had a caisson that was full of what are called James projectiles for the James cannons. And they were an interesting shell. They had these diagonal vents all the way around the lower part of the shell, and made the shell give out a screaming noise as it went through the air. But the shells have what are called percussion fuses. They are designed to explode when they hit the ground or whatever object they contacted. Anyway, these shells have a fuse that has a safe position on it, and supposedly as long as this fuse is in the safe position, it cannot explode. Well, they were coming around this very, very tight, almost a 90-degree turn along the cliff face, and one of the wheels of a caisson slipped off the road. And so the caisson's leaning about to tumble down. It's hooked up to a couple of mules. And the soldiers decided they would not unload the shells out of the caisson, but they would all, just by brute strength, get that wheel back up on the road. Well, when they went to lifting on that wheel and jostling the shells inside the caisson, that is the chest that they were carried in on the two-wheel wagon is what it effectively is. It hooks up to the cannon when it's being towed. One of the shells exploded, which meant basically a number of the shells in the caisson also exploded. And strangely enough, there were 4 soldiers wounded, but none were killed. But it blew the back leg clear off of one of the mules. And those shells, a lot of them that did not explode, were scattered all around and down on that slope towards the river. And I don't know of anyone, Bill, that's ever gone out and looked for those. And I'm sure they've never been found. The site has never been found. But it's described very much in detail in a book called A Masterful Retreat by Nichols. I know the author personally, and he's a Kentucky state representative right now and was a circuit court judge for many years. He's a good guy. He's one of the good guys. But he did a great job on researching this out, and it's a little-known story. And there are many other leads to sites on that 200-mile march as well, because John Hunt Morgan tried to stop them from reaching Greenup. He was under the illusion that if he could stop George Morgan's army from advancing, that the Confederate army that would confront him at Cumberland Gap would come up behind and then finish off the army, force him to surrender. He didn't know that John Hunt Morgan didn't know that the Confederate leaders there had absolutely no plans to send that army because they were going to need it to resist Buell's army at Perryville. That battle was coming up shortly. So anyway, there's a 200-mile stretch, and they had quite a few skirmishes with Morgan's men. Morgan did manage to stop and make them deploy their cannons and their battle lines time and time again. He and his men sniped at them, killed quite a few. But Morgan's got his division home. But it's said that by the time they got to Greenup to safety, because once they crossed the Ohio River, they were in Union-held territory. But it was said that most of the 10,000 men had very little clothing left on them, that they'd been ripped off of them by the briars and cutting their way through the wilderness, that their uniforms were in tatters and rags. That means they left a lot of buttons along that road that they cut through the wilderness. So there's a Civil War treasure story for you. I don't think that has ever been told on social media before. I think you just heard it first on that one.
Neat story. Neat story.
Okay.
All right. Good show. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah. What are we doing next week, Dorian? Do we know yet?
All right. Yes, we do. We are going to start an exciting series on the life and history and Civil War activity of the famous Confederate guerrilla leader, William Clark Quantrill. There are many secrets there about Quantrill and his force that both the federal government and the Southerners themselves have not wanted to been made public. Quantrill is supposedly, and his men are supposedly to have massacred the inhabitants of Lawrence, Kansas, and burned the town to the ground. And there is a lot of untruth in that story. I've got the actual details from people who were there when it happened. And we're going to set the historical record safe. We're also going to talk about Jesse James' time that he spent with Quantrill. We're going to talk about some of the battles they fought. And I'm going to try to prove in this series, Mike, that Quantrill and his men were very likely the most potent, powerful, and effective cavalry force that has ever existed on this planet. That's how special these men were when you know all the truth behind how they fought.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And we're going to do the photo supplemental thing, just like I did with the Jesse James series.
Oh,
I'll post
cool.
I'll post those on All Metal Mode the day that we have the part 1. I don't know how many parts it will take, 2 or 3 probably, to do the series.
Sounds great.
All right.
Great. Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, and good night, everybody.
Good night.